Michigan voters go to the polls this November, and CMU Public Broadcasting again brings you Meet the Candidates, the election year series that gives you the chance to meet those seeking state and national office.
Welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, and this time we welcome Gary Glenn. He is the Republican candidate for the 98th District seat in the Michigan House, an open seat due to term limits in this year's election. Welcome to our program. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We offer the first few moments for all of our candidates to do, as our title suggests, to offer up some of that personal background experience that you bring to the campaign.
Well, David, as I told a lot of people on the 8,000 doors that I knocked on in the primary election, I've got a wealth of experience, depth of knowledge on a wide array of issues. I've been in leadership positions on labor law reform, worked with the Mackinac Center for Public Policy in Midland on education reform in particular, have worked with the farm and ranch community in a professional capacity in the past, did 8 years in the Army Guard and Reserves, and was a county commissioner for 2 terms as a Republican, during which time I authored the nation's first medical savings account health care plan for county employees of any county in the country. So back in the 90s, I was traveling around the country to medical conventions and legislative policy conventions talking about free market health care reform. So labor law, education, health care, veterans and military issues, wide array of experiences that I think make me qualified. Been involved in the legislative process as an outsider for several decades, know how the system works, have a lot of people that I've worked with who are currently in the legislature, know where the bathrooms are down at the state capitol in Lansing. So I think I'm in a position qualified based on my experiences to do an effective job of providing reasonable and rational representation to people in Bay and Midland counties from day one. Won't take me 6 months to figure out how it works.
You mentioned those areas, but to be specific then, the actual outlines of townships or county lines that the 98th District includes. You always kind of let people sort of draw a map of the district to familiarize the voters.
Well, 65% of the vote is in the city of Midland, and then about another 25% is in the townships in Midland County that border the city of Midland. So there are 6 townships, Larkin Township and Lee, and Lincoln and Jerome and Homer and Midland, so the ones that actually border the city limits of Midland, and then 7 townships over in Bay County, including the cities of Auburn and Pinconning and Linwood. But 90% of the total district vote is in Midland County and 10% in Bay County. Bay County is primarily the rural areas west and north of the city of Bay City. So farm issues are an important issue to people in Bay County. And obviously we've got heavy concentration of manufacturing, corporate headquarters of Dow and Dow Chemical, Dow Corning, Hemlock, and the Michigan Cogeneration Venture. We've got major employers. Those of us who live near or in the city of Midland appreciate the nice oasis that it is, a very small community compared to a lot, but has a lot of amenities because of the fact that we are blessed to have these corporate headquarters located, and therefore we have a lot of amenities, a special quality of life, good schools, and certainly it'll be one of my responsibilities and duties as a state representative representing these 2 counties to protect that special quality of life that we enjoy in Midland and Bay counties.
How does that translate then into what people have said when you've knocked on the doors in those various parts of the district and those issues that you identified as a candidate entering the race as the primary concerns, the issues that people feel need to be addressed in this campaign?
I don't think there's any question that the need for creating the jobs that our families here in mid-Michigan need is the top concern of most voters. Are we going to fix the roads? Are we going to fix the potholes? Are we going to adequately fund public education? To me, and what I've told people at the doors, my highest priority will be is to figure out all the ways we can make Michigan more attractive to new business and industry, to make it easier, not perpetually harder for small business people to start businesses, to get people employed again, to keep them employed at good paying jobs. We're the only state that has lost population since the year 2000. And we had the worst job loss in the first decade of this century of any state in the country, 800,000 lost jobs. People have left Michigan. And so you have a shrinking tax base. You have fewer businesses in business to tax. You have fewer people, fewer taxpayers to tax because we've had an out-migration of population from the state of Michigan. That leaves you only two alternatives if you're going to continue to spend the same amount of money on fixing roads and education. And that is, you either have to cut what you're spending or you have to increase taxes on the ever-shrinking tax base. I don't think that's a very reliable source of funding. And so what we've got to do is restore Michigan's tax base. That's got to be our highest priority, is to get people to come back to Michigan because there are jobs here. I played a leadership role, Dave. In 2011, I was a founding member of the Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition, which launched the effort to pass a right-to-work law here in the state of Michigan, which simply says that individuals are free, if they want to join and affiliate with and financially support a labor union, but that you can no longer be required to do so as a condition of employment. That not only is an individual freedom of conscience and freedom of choice issue for the individual employee in a workplace, but it's also a major factor in a state's ability to attract new business and industry. We've had a dozen new car facilities, new automobile manufacturing facilities, for example, go into Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee and Texas over the last quarter century. Have not had any new automobile facilities in Michigan prior to passing a right-to-work law. So I'm going to be looking for other things that are going to make Michigan more attractive in competition, not only with 49 other states, but in the global economy with other countries where people can locate factories. Right-to-work was a good step in the right direction in terms of attracting new jobs. We've got to find all the different ways we can get people and businesses to come back to Michigan so that we have more businesses and people to tax and can more equitably spread the tax burden over a larger number of people. That's the only solution to finding the money for potholes and for schools over the long term. If we continue to lose population and don't stimulate our economy, it's going to be an ugly answer in terms of funding for necessary state activities for a long time in the future. So my biggest priority is going to be to bring as many jobs, new plant sites to Michigan, and hopefully, ideally, of course, here to Midland and Bay counties.
You touched upon then the idea of the tax structure. Are the voters talking about level of taxation? Are businesses talking about levels of regulation, and how might that translate into specific ideas that you would have to look at that part of the economic reinvention of the state? Well,
one of the first things I did after deciding to run for the State House of Representatives seat to represent Midland and Bay counties in particular is I read Andrew Liveris's book. Now, for those who don't know, he's the CEO of Dow Chemical. He wrote a book called Making It in America, because I didn't think it was rocket science that if you're going to represent Midland County and Bay County, you got to have some idea of what the major employers in this community believe is important for their continued profitability and ability to provide jobs and all the other amenities that they provide for these communities here in mid-Michigan. One of the things that Andrew Liveris wrote about, it would be easier if there was uniformity in regulation. You know, he wasn't saying we oppose regulation, but it would be nice if the requirements imposed on us at the federal level, the state level, and the local level are the same and not at different levels, so that we have to try to go through some complex process of meeting each different standard. So just uniformity in the regulations. Obviously, we want to have clean air and water, but it ought to be fair and done in such a way that there are not inconsistent regulations that are at odds with one another.
Given the structure then of how we have levels of federal, state, and local government, you're in that middle part of that, I guess the step up the ladder. Should the state then be looking to mirror more of what the federal policy is? Should the state government be looking to try to influence and bring, how would you go about trying to achieve that uniformity?
Well, I think at minimum we ought to have a policy that state regulations would not exceed or be more stringent than federal policies. I also get the sense that people think the federal government has grown too intrusive into our lives and freedoms. And James Madison wrote over 200 years ago that it was the duty of the state legislature to interpose itself between the people of its state and the federal government if the federal government was exceeding its constitutional authority. And certainly in some of these regulatory agencies, the tax issue, the IRS, the most hated and feared agency of the federal government, at the national level, the EPA, and at the state level, Department of Environmental Quality. I hear stories about how the EPA has one standard, DEQ has another, and if you try to comply with one, you're at odds with the other. Not just for business, but for people trying to develop their own property. We ought to get uniformity. not many people probably run for the legislature thinking in terms of fulfilling what Madison said our duty was, which was to protect the people of our state from the federal government when it exceeds its constitutional authority and intrudes in the way that it has in an ever-growing fashion into our personal liberties and to our economic activity. But I would certainly be mindful of that. I think I'm capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. I can deal with all the issues we have to deal with here at the state level, but I'm also going to be mindful of my responsibility. You know, the average citizen can't stand up to the federal government, but the state government could, but that requires somebody to have a sense of leadership about that and sense of duty about that being one of the roles of the state legislature, is to protect the people of our state from excesses of the federal government.
You mentioned then the thousands of doors. Many of our candidates, of course, have been out knocking on doors all across the districts that we've been talking about. If you had just the final few moments to leave that message, that single message with he or she, 98th District prospective voter, what would that message be as they get set to go to the polls?
Well, as I said to open our conversation, Dave, I've had a lot of different experiences working with farm and ranch families, working on labor law reform issues, working on education reform issues. I'd say behind creating jobs and improving our economy, that making sure every child in Michigan has an equal opportunity and access to quality and safe education, that parents of all income levels have the freedom to choose the safest and best school for their children. That ought to be our second highest priority. It's dependent on our ability to have a tax base that will support education. As is the condition of our roads. I'm not going to raise taxes. I'm not going to raise the gas tax and won't support raising anybody's taxes. But I've got a wealth of experience on a wide array of issues. I've got a track record of effective leadership, of actually accomplishing things that I set my mind to. And I think we need somebody who will approach issues in Lansing on an intellectual basis, on a dispassionate basis, rational, reasonable, and come up with solutions that will meet the needs of the people of our state and our families and our economy, and do so in such a way that not only my wife and children might be proud to be seen with me, but I hope that people of Midland and Bay counties would be proud of the job that I do as well. And if I could throw in a free plug, my website is garyglenn.us. If anybody would like to go and see the details about what I've talked about, where I stand, what my experiences have been.
Well, we appreciate the time and attention to address the issues that you've seen that the voters are telling you in the 98th District. Wish you best of luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thank you, Dave.
And thank you for your time and attention this time here on Meet the Candidates. We've been talking with Gary Glenn, the Republican candidate for Michigan's 98th District House seat. An open seat in this fall's election. We encourage all of you to get out and exercise your right to vote on November 4th.
Thank you for joining us for Meet the Candidates. CMU Public Broadcasting invited both major party candidates for this office to participate in this series. Remember to go to the polls on Election Day.
Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas and we are joined by Joan Brausch. She is the Democratic candidate for the 98th District seat in the Michigan House. This is an open seat in this year's election. Welcome to our program. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
In our first few moments, we allow each of our guests to offer up some of that background personal information, your hometown, and the experience that you bring to this campaign.
Well, I've lived in Midland for over 43 years with my husband, Dave. We raised our kids in Midland. We have 4 grandchildren, which is wonderful. I decided what I wanted to be when I grew up when I was 32. So I went to Detroit to go to school, commuted for 5 years, and then was able to get a job in my home parish for 18 years. And I had 2 leadership positions in that church and retired in 2008. And then after working for the church, I actually had some time to get more involved in my community. So I was able to serve on the local officers compensation board for the city and was part of the Citizens Academy, which was a phenomenal experience. And then also attended the Henry Marsh Institute for Public Policy over the past year, which is a real eye-opener in terms of learning more about public policy, not only in Midland, but in the region and in the state. So that has helped give me background. Also giving me background, it was running in 2012. That was a wonderful learning experience and helped me to do even better as I ran in this race, because it gave me a chance to learn the district much better, learn the people, learn the leadership of both the two counties, and has helped me to have a better team, a stronger team than I had before. And I'm running because we have a fantastic district. We have people who are determined to succeed. We have wonderful businesses here. We have a good agricultural area. And what I want to do is have our district continue to grow and to foster good business here, and create policies in Lansing that help us to continue to be a community that draws more business and draws new people to our area, that's diverse and successful. So that's my goal, and I'm hoping that people will consider electing me in November.
The 98th district itself, counties, townships, what makes up that map?
It's 7 townships in Bay and 6 townships in Midland. There are the city of Midland in Midland County and the village of Sanford. And then in Bay County, it runs up the western edge of Bay, including the city of Auburn, the city of Pinconning, and then Linwood. So it's a good mix of city, agricultural, some resort with Sanford, and the Pinconning-Linwood area as well.
In those different parts of the district, in all of the townships, the cities and so forth that are all included, your approach not only as a candidate, but the doors you've knocked on, the people you've spoken to, what's been identified as the primary issues, the main concerns that people have for this campaign?
Education has been primary for people who are who have children, but also people who have grandchildren, and also the young adults that we've talked to. We've had some volunteers who are from Delta and SVSU. That's a huge concern for them with their tuition fees. We have kids who are working a job or 2 jobs as well as going to school. I talked to a woman who is going to be graduating this December, and she has worked 2 jobs, and she's going to be leaving SVSU with a degree and tens of thousands of dollars in debt. But she wants to succeed and have this new beginning, and yet she's saddled with this debt so she can have a new beginning. So we need to address the issue of funding for students of all ages, and how we help them pay for their tuition. So that's an issue. Having good education for preschool all the way through 12th grade is an issue. The earlier we can start our kids out in 3 years classes and 4-year classes is going to help them have a leg up as they get into kindergarten through 12th grade. That's going to be good. We've had funding cut for schools. I've talked to teachers who are angry. They're putting their own money in for supplies. They see bigger classrooms. They see cuts. And they're not happy. Every teacher we talk with, they're not happy about what's been going on over the past 3 or 4 years.
What would be the area of the budget that they say, or they look at in what's out in front of them, where they would like to see the money's there now, we want to see more of it go to education?
They want to see it going into the classrooms, and they're not seeing that happening.
Where do they think that money can come from?
That's a good question. Well, there's the school fund has been a fund that is a very large pile of money in Lansing, and that school fund has not been treated as sacred. There's been money taken out of it for various things. Some of the school fund for K-12 had money taken out of it for college. So that's been a problem when you have a school fund that's supposed to take care of our schools from K to 12, and then there's money taken out of it for this and money taken out of it for that. That's going to affect how we can fund our schools. The whole pension issue is also something that needs to be addressed. The school fund has been intended to take care of both the pensioners and the classroom education. How can we handle that better? How can we better fund the pensioners, which we've made a contract to help them as they get into their post-education era, but how can we also be, true to having good education for our kids? And that's a question, I think, that's a question I feel very strongly that we need to get people around the table and talk about together. It's not something that can be dictated from the top. Us legislators are going to tell you people what we're going to do. We need to talk, pensioners, educators, legislators need to talk together and work it out and not make it a dictatorship. What can be done so it's fair for everybody?
People will say then that it's a question of how much money has been spent, not spent, budget cuts, and so on. Is the funding mechanism itself still viable? What do people say about Proposal A and the way, because this isn't 1994 anymore, is it go strictly to the amount of money or the way that whole funding mechanism is structured? What are they saying to you?
When I talk to people when people talk to me about education, they're not talking to me about whether they feel that the funding mechanism is broken or not, for the most part. When I'm talking to educators in an MEA situation, where people are very knowledgeable about how schools are funded, or a Board of Education member, or League of Women Voters people, they know how the schools are funded, and they have strong feelings about that one way or another. What I see is that, yes, it does need to be addressed. We do need to take a look at how we fund our schools from the bottom up. It's not working. But again, that's something that needs to be done carefully, and it needs to be done thoughtfully, and it needs to be done, again, not from the top down, but to take a look at have the municipalities, the counties, the educators, the administrators. Let's all take a look at it and do it long term, a long view, not just what can we do in the next 2 years or the 5 years, but long view, and plan this well and make it work.
You talked about cities, businesses, larger companies, agricultural areas that are all part of the 98th District. Overall, from an economic standpoint, and you said your goal to continue to see it thrive and grow for everyone, are there certain policy issues that you think need to be addressed to maintain that level of good balance that allows that continued growth, or areas where we are challenged there, perhaps?
One of the best things that we can do in our area is to have us work regionally, to have the counties work together regionally, and then to have the legislators of our area be advocates at the state level regionally. And that's actually happening, and I want it to continue to happen. The more we work together to be advocates for our area, that's already happening with the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance. It's happening with the chambers working together. It's happening with Midland Tomorrow, Saginaw Tomorrow, Bay Future working together. The more that happens, and people are cheerleaders for our area and help work hard to get more businesses to come into our area and see creative ways to make our area grow, the more that we will be successful. And then to draw areas close to us into that, Isabella County, Clare County, and other counties south and east. That will help us all to be more successful in the mid-Michigan area. So regionalism, I think, is very, very key.
We've taken good steps in that direction, or more needs to be done, and if so, how do we greater enhance that sense of regionalism?
We've taken good steps. We've already taken good steps, and we need to continue to make that happen. We have some very good visionary people who have already started. There's some wonderful development happening in Bay City, some good development happening in Saginaw, good stuff happening in Midland. So that we need to continue to foster those entrepreneurs who want to invest in our areas, find other ones who want to invest in places that have possibilities, and continue that.
Common concerns that we've seen with many of our candidates then when it comes to the issues of education and the economy and the like that you've had a chance to discuss from your point of view as a candidate for the office. If you had in our last minute or so, the chance to talk to that individual voter, he or she is getting ready to cast that vote on November 4th, what's that last message you would like to leave with them as they get set to go to vote?
I have a passion for service. I want to be the voice of the 98th District for our area. I have spent most of my life in service, and I want to I've listened to people in our area for the past 3 years at doors and in groups, and have tried to take into my heart what people want and need. And I want to take that down to Lansing and speak for the people of our area. I have no particular agenda. I'm a person who wants to build bridges and listen to the diversity of our area and serve the people of our area.
Well, we appreciate your time in addressing all those concerns for the voters and that you've seen in the district as you've talked to them. Thanks very much for the time, and good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us as well here on Meet the Candidates. We've been talking with Joan Brausch. She is the Democratic candidate for the 98th District seat in the Michigan House, an open seat in this November's election. As always, we encourage all of you to get out and exercise your right to vote, and do so on Tuesday, November 4th.
This has been Meet the Candidates, a production of CMU Public Broadcasting. Both major party candidates were invited to participate in this series. For a complete listing of the air dates and times for this series, go to our website, wcmu.org.